Hello, my name is Avi Jorisch, and I'm extraordinarily pleased to be here today launching the traditional Chinese version of my book, Thou Shalt Innovate. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Irene Chang, along with her team at Show Information, Israel's Economic and Cultural Office in Taipei, and the organizers of this prestigious book fair. I would like to introduce the background of this book first. I grew up thinking my generation would see peace in the Middle East. As a graduate student, I studied Islamic history and Arabic in Jerusalem and Cairo, and traveled around the region hoping to witness a lasting change. But the people of the region have been plagued with a seemingly never-ending cycle of violence. I experienced the 2014 war between Israel and Hamas, going in and out of bomb shelters. Yet something else happened in the summer of 2014. I came to learn that the Iron Dome, a first-of-its-kind, innovative, mobile, all-weather air defense system that provides protection against unmanned area vehicles and missile threats to Israel. This piece of equipment single-handedly saves a tremendous number of lives and is perhaps one of Israel's greatest technological inventions. Almost by chance, I began to notice the other innovations around me that were making a real difference in fostering a kinder, gentler world. After every crisis, whether it was a rocket that came crashing down, a traffic accident, or a random heart attack, almost immediately appeared an emergency responder riding on a kind of half ambulance, half motorcycle known as an ambucycle, dispatched using an Uber-like application on a smartphone. My Jerusalem gardener pointed out that he used a special dripper that I soon learned was being used by farmers all over the world to conserve one of our most important resources, water, and feed our growing world population. One of my colleagues was diagnosed with Parkinson's and began undergoing deep brain stimulation to help with his symptoms. I learned that the device that was used had been designed by Imad and Reem Yunus, an Arab couple from Nazareth. Their innovation has revolutionized brain surgery through a GPS system that allows surgeons to insert an electrode device into the exact affected part of the brain to treat all kinds of movement and psychiatric disorders. These stories were like small rays of hope cutting through the darkness I felt was overtaking the region. I wanted to connect with this inspirational side of Israel, and so I began to deliberately seeking out social innovators who were working on challenges, small and large, that were making life better for millions, if not billions of people around the world. Once I was exposed to these stories, I knew I needed to write this book. The secrets behind Israel's technological success lie in the stories I feature in Thou Shalt Innovate. How did Israel, a tiny country in a hostile Middle East, become a technological powerhouse? And what lessons can Taiwanese learn from Israel's success that they can integrate for their own benefit? When I started writing this book, I hadn't realized the extent to which Israel's innovative spirit was having an impact far beyond the borders of the State of Israel, addressing some of the world's most pressing social problems. It quickly became clear to me that Israel was much more than the startup nation. It was playing a disproportionate role in helping solve some of the world's biggest challenges, including those in Taiwan. There are several explanations for Israel's success: mandatory military service, renowned universities, smart government programs supporting innovation, a diverse population, and a dearth of natural resources. Yet no list would be complete without a mention of chutzpah, an Israeli national trait that is best described as a combination of self-confidence and audacity. Taiwanese will identify with the fact that Israel is not just a startup nation, but a place where people of all religions and ethnicities strive to make the world a better place for everyone, even as the surrounding region is mired in seemingly intractable wars. Israel and Taiwan have many similarities. Since the Republic of China relocated to Taiwan in 1949, it has transformed its economy from one of the world's least developed to one of the largest and fastest growing. Much of the fuel for this astonishing metamorphosis is technology and innovation. Both countries have ancient religious and cultural traditions. Both are relatively young, established within a few months of each other. Both have diverse religious and linguistic populations and outstanding universities. Both live under constant military threat, and both have a strong startup ecosystem. Taiwan has undergone rapid industrialization and economic growth and has become known as one of the 4 Asian tigers alongside Singapore, South Korea, and Hong Kong. Israel has mobilized to solve problems that originally appeared unique to it, but ultimately proved to be applicable elsewhere. As Taiwan looks to the global stage for the best innovations to improve the lives of its citizens, Israel has a number of technologies worth exploring for the benefit of all. I'd like to share 5 examples. The first example is the Uber of ambulances. Today, Taipei has roughly the population the size of Jerusalem. Response time to emergencies varies widely in different locations. The Taiwanese pre-hospital care system consists of both government and private services. A typhoon and earthquake-plagued country, Taiwan is no stranger to large and small-scale disasters. In Jerusalem, a city of about 9 million, an ambulance can take more than 20 minutes to arrive at the scene. About 20 years ago, Eli Beer started United Hatzalah with a group of volunteer EMTs. But in order to save lives, he needed to expand the group. To do that, Beer had to solve 2 problems. First, he needed to construct a highly trained network of people all over the country. Second, he had to create a system to ensure that medics can treat victims almost immediately. Today, Beer has more than 6,000 volunteers in Israel, including secular and religious Jews and Muslims alongside Christians and Arabs. And Hatzalah has chapters in the United States, Brazil, and Panama. All its EMTs use a smartphone application that sends a notification to the 5 volunteers closest to the person needing help. These EMTs often travel on ambucycles, and each has a trauma kit, an oxygen canister, a blood sugar monitor, and a defibrillator. Hatzalah volunteers treat approximately 245,000 Israelis annually, including 27,000 children. A quarter of the calls the organization fields are for life-threatening situations. The national average response time in Israel is under 3 minutes, and in major cities, that number drops down to an incredible 90 seconds. Standardized pre-hospital care was developed in Taiwan following the enactment of the Emergency Medical Services Act in 1995. Taiwanese experts say that the efforts to standardize pre-hospital care throughout the country in terms of accessibility and efficiency have not been fully successful. Hatzalah's model could be used in Taiwan's congested cities and in the outlying countryside. Having local volunteer responders in Taiwan could save many, many lives. I'm going to share a second example. Water is life. As people everywhere turn on their taps, most are not aware that by 2025, at least half of the globe's population of 7.6 billion is expected to be living in water-stressed areas. And according to the World Health Organization, as of 2017, over 2 billion people in the world lack access to safe drinking water. In 2020, the government of Taiwan announced extreme water shortages as water levels in the country's reservoirs dipped to an extremely low levels due to a lack of typhoons. This was the first time since 1964 that Taiwan had not experienced a single typhoon. The country is normally hit by an average of 3.5 per year. With a pandemic in effect and heightened hygiene awareness at an all-time high, Israel, though 60% desert, a few years ago announced that it had achieved water independence through smart planning and innovative thinking. No longer reliant on the weather or its neighbors for its water needs, Israel has become a water superpower by charging users the real cost of water, desalinizing seawater, reusing treated sewage for agriculture, implementing drip irrigation techniques, and mandating that authorities actually spend 100% of all water and sewage fees on water and maintaining water infrastructure. Let's talk about desalination. In 2018, Israel's fifth desalination plant went online. Collectively, the country's desalination plants provide about 600 million cubic meters of water annually, which represents approximately 55% of Israel's domestic water supply. Experts expect that desalination plants will provide 70% of Israel's drinking water by 2050. Much of the credit for the plant goes to IDE Technologies, an Israeli desalination company established in 1965, which has built 400 plants in 40 countries over the last 4 decades. This technology was originally developed in the United States by Sidney Loeb in the early 1960s and perfected after Loeb moved to Israel in 1967. Let's next address wastewater recycling. Israel purifies almost 90% of its wastewater and uses it in irrigation, 4 times more than any other country. Spain, which is second, recycles only about 20%, while the United States recycles less than 10%. In other words, human waste is now potentially extraordinarily valuable. Israel's recycled wastewater is predominantly used for agricultural irrigation. About 10% is used for environmental purposes, such as increasing river flow volume and fire suppression, and only 5% is discharged into the ocean. The emerging field of reclaimed water has created vast new business and economic opportunities for Israel. For example, Aquwise, which is active in over 20 countries, has become a global leader in the field with over 150 installations around the world. Next, let's address drip irrigation. In the mid-1960s, Israel's Netafim invented the world's first modern drip irrigator, which helps farmers, cooperatives, and governments conserve more water. Netafim is a global powerhouse with more than 30% of the global drip irrigation market and sells its products in more than 110 countries. Irrigation is crucial to the global food supply. Only 18% of the world's farmland is irrigated, and that yields 40% of the global food supply. It is estimated that less than 4% of the world's irrigated land is equipped with drip irrigation, so clearly this revolution has a way to go. Israel has figured out a way to leverage technology to improve the lives of billions of people. Taiwan can look to Israel and its innovators to help effectively address the emerging water challenge. The third example I would like to address is the Golden Firewall. Gil Schwed, Shlomo Kramer, and Marius Necht created the world's first firewall in the 1990s to protect corporate and personal data online. Today, Check Point's firewall protects more than 100,000 businesses, including 94% of Fortune 100 companies, 87% of Fortune 500 companies, and nearly every government around the world. The amount of cybercrime that takes place around the world is staggering. More than 1.5 million attacks take place each year. That means that 4,000 every day, 170 every hour, and 3 every minute. In 2014, hackers stole the personal information of roughly 47% of the adult American population. And in 2013, cybercriminals managed to successfully breach 43% of American companies. McAfee, the world's largest dedicated security technology company, estimates that the global cost of cyber-related crime is more than $400 billion. Taiwan has one of the most technologically advanced computer microchip and information technology sectors in the world. Taiwan has systems in place to support its national cybersecurity protection system. In the last 5 years, the Taiwanese executive branch established the Department of Cybersecurity, and the military created the Information Communication Electronic Force Command to specialize in cyber warfare. More recently, in 2018, the Taiwanese government launched a cyber academy to address the skilled labor shortage of cybersecurity professionals. Israel's startup nation ecosystem, and specifically its robust cybersecurity sector, makes a perfectly match to Taiwan's manufacturing prowess. The fourth example I would like to address today is the Sun King. Over the last half-century or so, interest in solar water heating has spread because we are consuming oil, gas, and coal at an alarming rate. These fossil fuels emit harmful greenhouse gases that contribute to global warming, and policymakers around the world now realize that they must fight climate change. In Taiwan specifically, inexpensive clean energy will play an important role in helping the population rise to the middle class. The Taiwanese government has announced that it will boost renewable energy to 20% by 2025. It is introducing a $1 trillion investment. Solar energy will play in the island's development. Solar energy is a mature industry in Taiwan, but the country's limited land hinders its development. In the early 1950s, Israel was newly independent and struggling. Israel physicist Harry Tzvi Tabor knew that Israel would need a cheap and reliable energy source. Tabor developed special stripping that collected solar energy, and he connected the stripping to a water collection device. The solar heater, which yielded more hot water and produced more electricity than a turbine, is now ubiquitous in Israel and one of the most recognizable features on many rooftops around the world. In 1967, Israel's parliament passed a law requiring every building constructed after 1980 to have solar water collectors. Over the years, this has saved Israel and its citizens billions of dollars in energy costs. Today, about 90% of all households in Israel use Tabor's invention, and many buildings throughout the country are moving to solar power. Taiwan should consider drafting similar legislation. With government assistance and through increased awareness, this innovation could play an important role in powering Taiwanese economy. The solar water collector has the potential to serve as a powerful energy bridge between Israel and Taiwan. Taiwan and Israel have tremendous potential to solve the world's greatest challenges, deepen their commercial interests, and create technology together. To further promote innovation, Taiwan and Israel should strengthen their ties. Trade between Taiwan and Israel currently stands at roughly $1.5 billion annually. Starting in the 1990s, Israel and Taiwan opened representative offices, and since then, the two countries have signed more than 20 bilateral agreements on a wide spectrum of fields. In 2019, Taiwan opened a branch of the Taiwan External Trade Development Council, also known as TITRA, in Tel Aviv, which is also known as the Taiwan Trade and Innovation Center, which will specifically promote technological innovation. As the world faces many grave challenges, including some threatening the very future of our planet, Israel is playing an outsized role in creative solutions that make an impact. As Taiwanese policymakers, aid workers, scientists, and others look to solve these challenges, they should consider turning to Israel for existing innovations that can make a difference, or to work together to create new ones. Israel's Uber of ambulances, the firewall, and the solar water collector provide excellent opportunities to strengthen the relationship between the two countries. And this is just a sampling. There's an infinite number of ways we can work collaboratively to advance our societies for the greater benefit of all. Integration of these innovations into Taiwanese society could improve and save lives of an untold number of people. I hope you enjoy reading the traditional Chinese version of Thou Shalt Innovate, and I wish you continuing success.